It was just after 7 a.m. when Jordan stepped off the bus at the corner of 8th and Temple. The city was still waking up, coffee carts setting up, joggers weaving through slow traffic. He adjusted the strap of his worn leather messenger bag and glanced down at his boots, dulled by dust from the early walk. Today was the first on-site inspection for the Roosevelt Square project, the biggest redevelopment initiative downtown had seen in years. Jordan was the lead architect. He'd drawn the first concept sketch on a napkin at a diner 2 years ago. The napkin was now framed in his office. But he didn't dress like the kind of man who designed million-dollar buildings. He wore a navy utility jacket, jeans, and a plain t-shirt. His hair was in twists. No hard hat yet, he kept that in his bag, waiting until he was past the gates. The site loomed ahead, scaffolding, cranes, workers already in motion. A security booth sat by the entrance, with a small wooden barrier blocking the pedestrian path. Jordan approached. The guard was white, late 40s, buzz-cut, with mirrored sunglasses and a thermos in hand. He looked up slowly, then down again at a clipboard. "Deliveries are around back," he said, not bothering to make eye contact. Jordan paused, adjusted his bag, and stepped closer. "I'm not a delivery. I'm here for the 7:30 inspection." The guard finally looked at him, expression unreadable. He took in Jordan's appearance, jacket, boots, skin. "Inspection?" he echoed. "You a contractor?" "No," Jordan said evenly. "I'm Jordan Wright, the architect." There was a beat of silence, then a slight laugh, disbelieving. "You?" the guard said. "Right? .id." Jordan reached for his wallet without a word. Not annoyed. Not surprised. Just tired. He held out his company badge, which the guard took and squinted at. Then came the smirk. "Yeah, this doesn't mean anything to me. You're not on the entry list." Jordan's fingers tightened slightly around the strap of his bag. "I'm the one who signed off on the final blueprints. I've got the updated schematics in here," he said, tapping the bag. "You can call Carla Jensen. She's the lead developer. She'll confirm." "Look, I'm not calling anyone," the guard interrupted. "You're not getting in without someone from the team walking you through. I don't care what you say you are." Behind Jordan, a young woman in a hard hat and safety vest walked past, giving him a glance before nodding at the guard. The gate opened. She went through without question. Jordan stood still. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. Not yet. Jordan stepped back slightly from the barrier, phone still buzzing in his pocket, and watched as another worker strode past and was waved through with barely a glance. A white guy, younger, maybe mid-20s, earbuds in and head down. The guard gave him a nod, raised the arm of the gate, and let him pass without a word. The contrast was sharp, and not unfamiliar. Jordan pulled out his phone. One missed call from Carla Jensen. He called her back, pacing slowly along the chain-link fence, staying within sight of the entrance. She picked up on the first ring. "Jordan, I just parked. You already on site?" "I'm here," he said. His tone didn't waver, but he didn't hide the edge in it. "But I'm not inside. Security says I'm not on the list." A pause. "What? That's ridiculous. I sent the full list last week, including you." "I guess I don't look the part," he said dryly. Another pause, heavier this time. "I'll be there in 2 minutes. Don't move." He hung up. Didn't thank her. Didn't need to. Jordan turned back toward the gate. The guard had stepped out of the booth now, arms crossed, watching him. Jordan's ID still dangled from the clipboard. "You know," the guard said, his voice just loud enough to carry, "we've had a lot of people try to sneak onto the site. Had to tighten things up." Jordan met his eyes. "I didn't sneak," he said. "I walked up and gave you my name. My credentials." "Credentials don't mean much when anyone can print a badge," the guard replied, shrugging. "Got to be careful these days." Another worker passed. Another wave through. Jordan didn't respond. The silence that followed was deliberate. It wasn't the first time someone had looked past his words, past his title, past his presence. But it might be the last time this man would do it without consequence. A black SUV rolled up to the curb, idling just behind the security booth. The back door opened and out stepped Carla Jensen, early 50s, blonde bob, sharp suit under a neon safety vest. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she strode toward the gate, phone still in hand. She saw Jordan first, then the guard. Her pace quickened. "Tom," she called out, loud and curt. "Is there a reason why the lead architect is standing outside the site like a visitor?" The guard straightened, caught off guard by her tone. He fumbled for his clipboard. Ma'am. He wasn't on the list." "He was on the list I personally submitted," Carla snapped. "Jordan Wright led on this project. Every steel beam out there is positioned based on his work." Tom hesitated, glanced at Jordan, then back to her. "I didn't realize. That's the problem," she said, voice lowering. "You didn't ask. You assumed." Carla reached for the gate's control, punched in the override code, and the barrier lifted. "Jordan," she said, voice softening, "please, let's get to the walkthrough." Jordan stepped through the open gate, expression unchanged. He didn't look at Tom. Didn't need to. Behind them, workers had started to notice. A few heads turned. Someone lowered their phone mid-scroll. No one said anything. As they walked side by side toward the scaffolding, Carla glanced over at him. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know," Jordan replied. But the way he said it, like he'd heard those words before, and they never fixed what came before them. The site was alive. Metal groaning under pressure, hammers tapping rhythmically, the low rumble of machinery in motion. Jordan and Carla moved past the skeletal frame of what would soon be the community center atrium. Welders paused briefly as they passed, some offering nods, most just watching. Carla gestured toward a cluster of temporary offices ahead. "Let's run through the updates inside. It's quieter." Jordan gave a slight nod, but his eyes lingered on the steel beams. He spotted a flaw, an off-center joint that would need correcting before the week was out. He made a mental note. Inside the trailer, the noise faded. Carla closed the door behind them and motioned for him to take a seat. He stayed standing. She sat anyway, pulling up the digital plans on a tablet. But after a beat, she looked up at him. "You okay?" Jordan tilted his head slightly. "You mean aside from being treated like I don't belong in the space I helped design?" Carla looked down at her hands, folded over the tablet. "I'm going to talk to Tom," she said. "That kind of behavior, he won't last long here." Jordan finally set his bag on the table and pulled out a printed set of blueprints. He spread them across the surface carefully, hands steady. "I'm not asking you to fire him," he said. "I'm asking you to notice how easy it was for him to treat me like I didn't count. That's the part that matters." She didn't respond right away. He didn't expect her to. The trailer filled with a quiet tension. Not anger, something heavier. They went over the changes in silence at first, Jordan pointing to revisions, Carla taking notes. But the weight in the room hadn't lifted. It clung to the corners, settled into the small pauses between words. Half an hour passed before Carla finally broke it. "You've been through this before, haven't you?" she asked, not looking up. Jordan's pencil paused over a measurement. He nodded once. "Too many times to count." She tapped the tablet screen, scrolling aimlessly now. "I guess I thought it wouldn't happen here. Not on this site. Not with this team." "You don't fix a foundation by painting the walls," he said. Carla looked at him then. Really looked. Jordan had always been calm, thoughtful. Never raised his voice in meetings. Never interrupted. But now she saw the lines around his eyes, the quiet weight he carried. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Because I wanted to be judged by the work, not the reaction." She sat back in her chair, the words sinking in deeper than she liked. Outside, the buzz of construction continued. But in the trailer, the silence was building something new. Not anger, not guilt, understanding. The slow kind that doesn't come from confrontation, but from being unable to look away anymore. By the time they stepped out of the trailer, the sun was higher, casting sharp shadows across the unfinished concrete. Jordan adjusted his bag over one shoulder, his mind already shifting back to the structural fixes they discussed. Carla stayed close beside him, more aware now of the glances they drew. The change wasn't dramatic, but it was there. Workers who earlier hadn't looked twice were now watching. Not staring, not obvious, just quiet, assessing, like they were seeing him again for the first time, unsure how they missed him the first time. At the edge of the lot, a young electrician, early 20s, Hispanic, tool belt slung low, approached hesitantly. "Hey," he said, eyes flicking between Jordan and Carla. "Sorry to interrupt. You're the architect, right?" Jordan stopped. "Yeah." The young man nodded, then offered his hand. "Your layout on the East Hall? Smart move with the conduit clearances. Saved us hours." Jordan shook his hand. "Appreciate that." The young man grinned and walked off. Simple, respectful, no tension. Carla exhaled beside him. "That's what should have happened at the gate," she muttered. Jordan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, on the same ground where he'd been denied entry 2 hours earlier, something had shifted. Not the rules, not the signs, the people. One by one, without announcement. That's how it starts. They moved toward the East Wing scaffolding where the framing crew was double-checking beam placements. Carla peeled off to speak with the site supervisor. Jordan stayed back, watching the flow of activity. He pulled a folded sheet from his bag, notes he'd made weeks ago on a late night in his studio. Reinforcement adjustments, minor tweaks, but crucial. As he reviewed the sketches, he heard footsteps approach. It was Tom. No sunglasses now. Just the same security badge, same uniform. But his posture had shifted, no more crossed arms, no smug smile. Just a man trying to decide how to start a sentence. Jordan didn't look up. I didn't know, Tom said finally. Jordan folded the sheet slowly and slipped it back into his bag. That's not the point. Tom nodded. A little too quickly. I just thought, with everything going on, I have to be careful. We've had issues before. Jordan looked at him then. Calm, measured. You weren't being careful. You were being selective. Tom's face tightened. It's not like that. It is exactly like that, Jordan said. And the difference is, this time you got caught. A pause. Then Jordan turned back to the scaffolding, pointing something out to one of the engineers nearby. Tom stayed where he was, silent. It was the first time all day he had nothing to say. Carla returned with the site supervisor, a stocky man named Doug with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a pencil behind his ear. He nodded at Jordan as they approached. Been meaning to meet you, Doug said. Heard good things from the framing team. Jordan nodded once. Appreciate it. Doug gestured toward the structure behind them. Want to walk it together? Get your take before we lock in that next phase. They moved through the partially framed hallways, steel beams crisscrossed above, insulation still exposed, wires dangling like vines. Jordan walked slowly, eyes scanning, mind quietly working. Doug stayed close, asking questions that showed he'd done his homework. Carla trailed a few steps behind, letting the two men talk. It wasn't until they reached the main atrium that Doug finally said what had been simmering. Heard about what happened at the gate, he said, not looking at Jordan. Guy's a jerk. Shouldn't have happened. Jordan glanced at him. Doug rubbed the back of his neck. We've had a lot of people come through this site. Not many carry themselves like you do. Jordan's voice was quiet, but steady. It's not about how I carry myself. It's about how people assume I shouldn't be here. Doug didn't argue. Just gave a small, almost regretful nod. The three of them stood in the open space, sunlight pouring through the gaps in the ceiling, dust particles swirling like thoughts suspended in air. This was the heart of the building. And now, whether they admitted it or not, it was also the heart of the story they wouldn't forget. Later that morning, the team gathered at the northwest corner where a tension cable installation had gone off spec. It was technical, nothing dramatic, but still required Jordan's oversight. He crouched beside the anchor point, reviewing the tension alignment. Two younger crew members watched him closely. You really designed all this? One asked, voice cautious. Jordan didn't look up. Yeah. The second guy, taller, arms crossed, frowned slightly. Why'd you come dressed like that then? Jordan glanced up just for a second, then returned to the cable specs. To see how people treat someone they don't expect to matter. Neither of them had an answer. Behind them, Carla stepped into view, watching the exchange. She didn't interrupt. Jordan stood, brushing dust from his hands. I'm not here to prove anything, he said, voice even. Just here to make sure this place stands when we're gone. The taller one nodded slowly. Something had cracked, not the concrete, not the cable. A perception. It wouldn't mend quickly, but the fracture would stay visible. A line in the foundation. A reminder of what they almost missed. By early afternoon, the walkthrough had ended. Carla and Jordan stood near the temporary exit gate where the sounds of construction faded just enough for conversation. Carla checked her phone, another meeting in 20 minutes. She didn't rush. You handled this morning with more patience than I deserved, she said. Jordan gave a slight shrug. Wasn't about you. Not really. But I brought you onto this project, she replied. I should have made it clear to everyone who you were. He looked out over the site, rows of girders, dirt paths becoming roads, steel bones slowly forming something permanent. No, he said. You shouldn't have to announce who I am to get respect. That's the problem. Carla was quiet, then nodded once. From across the lot, the young electrician from earlier passed again, raising a hand in a quiet wave. Jordan returned it. Then faintly from behind them came a voice they hadn't expected. Mr. Wright? It was one of the city inspectors. Mid-50s, white hair, clipboard in hand. He walked up with hesitation, then held out a hand. Didn't get a chance to say it before, he said. But the work you've done here, it's solid. Real solid. Jordan shook his hand. Thanks. The inspector looked around briefly, then added, just wish more folks could see the mind behind it before they see everything else. Carla watched Jordan. But he didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because that right there, that sentence, was the echo. The one that would linger long after the concrete had cured. Back downtown, in the polished glass building where Wright Architecture and Design occupied the 6th floor, Jordan stepped out of the elevator later that day. The change in atmosphere was immediate, cool lighting, soft hums of conversation, framed photos of completed projects lining the hall. His assistant Rachel looked up from her desk. Hey, you're back early. Everything go smooth? Jordan paused, then walked to his office. It went. Got a call with zoning in an hour. Yeah, and you're 3 p.m. with the materials team, she replied, watching him a little more closely now. Inside his office, he set his bag down and sank into the chair. The same blueprints he'd carried to the site now lay rolled tight on the desk. From the window, he could just make out the cranes in the distance, tiny, slow-moving against the skyline. Rachel knocked gently and entered. Carla called, she said. Left a message. Said, tell him I heard him. And I'm still thinking about it. Jordan didn't answer at first. Then he nodded. Good. Because that was the point. Not the apology. Not the fix. The thinking. The quiet reckoning. That's what lasted. That evening, Jordan sat with Marcus, his old mentor and retired architect, in a quiet corner of a small coffee shop near Midtown. They met every few weeks, no agenda, just talk, decompress, compare notes. Marcus sipped his tea, watching Jordan over the rim of his cup. You look tired. Jordan gave a dry smile. It was a long day. Marcus leaned back. What happened? Jordan told him. Not every detail. Just enough. The gate. The guard. Carla's face. The electrician. The shift. Marcus didn't interrupt. When Jordan finished, Marcus nodded slowly. You handled it better than I would have, he said. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. No, Jordan said, shaking his head. Not when you're the only one in the room who looks like you and the weight of every misjudgment lands before you even speak. Marcus set his cup down. That's the choice. To carry it or not. You carried it. You didn't drop it on anyone's head, but you didn't pretend it wasn't there. Jordan looked out the window. The city lights blinked quietly in the dusk. I just want to build, he said. You are, Marcus replied. But not just buildings. And Jordan knew what he meant. Because structure wasn't just steel and concrete. Sometimes it was restraint. Sometimes it was what you didn't say and how loudly that silence echoed. The next morning, Jordan arrived at the site again, same clothes, same bag, same walk. This time, the gate lifted without a word. Tom didn't speak. He didn't smile. He just pressed the button, then stepped aside. Jordan didn't acknowledge him. Not out of pettiness. Just clarity. The kind that says, I remember what happened here. So do you. Inside, several workers nodded. Some gave him space, others not quite sure how to approach him now. The young electrician caught his eye again, gave a small salute with 2 fingers. No words. Just recognition. By the trailers, Carla stood in her vest, talking with Doug. She saw Jordan and raised a hand mid-conversation. Morning, she called out louder than she needed to. Doug turned, nodded toward Jordan. Architects here. The tone was different now. Not forced. Not rehearsed. Just real. As Jordan stepped into the atrium space again, a crew was guiding a steel beam into place. It moved slowly, suspended by cables, sun hitting it at a sharp angle, casting a long, solid shadow across the floor. A clean line. Straight, undeniable. Like respect. Not given. Earned? No. Later that day, Jordan held a short meeting in the makeshift conference area, just a few folding chairs and a table marked with coffee stains. Carla, Doug, and a few foremen joined. It was technical, electrical routes, stairwell lighting, load-bearing tweaks. But the tone in the room had shifted. They listened closer. Interrupted less. And when Jordan pointed out a flawed ventilation path, no one pushed back. No one asked him to double-check. They just adjusted the plan. After the meeting, as people filed out, Doug lingered. Just so you know, he said, voice low, some of the guys, they've been talking. Not in a bad way. Just different now. Jordan looked at him. Different how? Doug scratched his beard. Like maybe they're realizing this place doesn't just need to be built right, it needs to be run right, too. Jordan nodded once. Then packed his notes in silence. He didn't need credit. Didn't want it. The shift wasn't about being praised. It was about no longer being ignored. Carla stood near the doorway watching. When he walked past, she didn't say anything. She just moved aside without hesitation, without prompting. Making room. That finally was enough. Weeks passed. The atrium was nearly enclosed now, windows fitted, beams hidden behind finished walls. Jordan stood alone near the northeast corner, reviewing a final inspection checklist. The air smelled like drywall and fresh paint. The project was almost ready for handoff. Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned to see the young electrician again, hard hat in hand now, hair matted from a long shift. Place looks good, the kid said. Jordan gave a slight smile. Yeah, it's coming together. The kid hesitated, then stepped closer. Can I ask you something? Sure. That day, when they wouldn't let you in, why didn't you just snap? I would've. Jordan took a breath, then exhaled slowly. Because I'm not here to teach anyone a lesson they didn't ask for, he said. I'm here to build. And sometimes, people don't hear what you say until they see who you are. The kid nodded, absorbing that. Jordan glanced up at the glass ceiling above, the way it caught the light just right. Nothing flashy. Just clean. Honest. You think they'll remember? The kid asked. Jordan turned back to him. They already do. As he walked out of the atrium for the last time, no one stopped him. No sideways glances. No double takes. Just quiet nods. A space made with intention and finally, respected for who made it possible. Not by force. Not by title. But by showing up anyway.